I'll tell you what, phew, what a scorcher. Britain sizzled today under an unexpected, whatever it is. God, stop Project Fear, gang media. Stop buying into this. It's warm. Get over it. It's okay. We'll survive. Everybody survived 1976. We'll survive this. Hello, everyone. I'm Russ Kane. This is The Daily Show. And this is men's radio station. It's a new thing for me. By the way, here's my thing. A new day for me because I've changed my weekly slot on Talk TV. And so I got home this morning at 4:30, grabbed a little sleep and been up and at 'em ever since. So there we go. Right. Stay cool, but stop panicking, for goodness sake. It's not the end of the world. It's not the day the earth caught fire. It's going to be okay. You know, just the media have to, of course, fill up all their pages. This is very, very good. This is from Robert Van Buren. Hi, Russ. Watcher. Yeah, there's a gag there. And he goes, good news, you found your watch. I know. Unbelievable. I lost a special watch that was given to me by Capital Radio when I left after 20 years. I was just so upset that I lost it. It was very sentimental. It was a beautifully engraved Rolex. And this morning, thanks to some wonderful advice on Facebook, hundreds of you piled in, it turned up. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get international. Forget New York. Forget New Zealand. We're talking New Malden.
Respect from the wilds of New Malden. Good afternoon.
Absolutely. Is it afternoon? Blimey, what happened?
Yeah,
Great.
it actually is. 1 minute and 52 seconds into Monday afternoon.
Oh, shut up. To organise. Hiya, Russ. Hiya, Linda, Dave.
Hi, Linda.
Karen Shortland.
Hi, Karen.
You found your watch. Yeah, bless you. And Robert Van Buren is saying, hello, Neil, because he's your man.
Hello, RVB.
All right, everybody. There we go. It'll be warm, but, you know, we'll survive. We've got not one, but two guests. They both turned up at the same time. I don't care because it's great and we can have a proper conversation. So this is called Organisation. Please welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John O'Brien and Judith. You're both all there at the same time. Never mind. You're just going to have to get on. Now, wow, John, you look like you're sitting in a spaceship. What are you sitting in?
I'm sitting in a rehearsal studio. We are in Addlestone doing our final rehearsal before we hit the road. So the band is next door. You may hear them. I closed all the doors, but
oh no, you probably need to open the doors. You're going to be melting there.
I'm from Florida.
What? Oh, you're from Florida. Oh, it's nothing to you. This is probably chilly.
Yeah, well, actually, a little bit. It's not chilly today. Don't get me wrong, but yeah. I'm used to the 90 degrees and 90% humidity. So
yes.
It's a little easier on me, but I know everybody. It seems I turn the news on and the word degrees is said about 100 times every minute.
Yeah, because there's nothing else to say. They've either got to talk about the Tory. They've either got to talk about the Tory leadership race, right, Judith? And who knows? Because who the bloody hell are any of them? I've never heard of any of these people. I keep getting asked on other radio stations, "What do you think?" I don't know who they are. I've never heard of them till yesterday. God knows who they are. I think they just invent them. Or somebody gets off a train. Hey, you look. You come here. You know we're going to get you. Hello, Judith, and I'm going to say good afternoon. I prefer to say good morning because my day's just really started. Judith, how are you?
I'm very well and very nice to be with you all.
It looks like you're in a call center. That's very impressive with your headset.
Well, I just read the email where it said that you needed to have a headset, so I just followed. I
followed
the instructions.
Bless you. Yes, I send that to everybody. Let's, John, if it's all right with you, can we start with Judith very quickly and then come back to you?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you want it the other way around? John, you hang there. I love hearing the American accent.
Thank you.
Right. So, Judith, tell us all. And John, you are our guest, so you just jump in. Judith, tell us all about yourself.
I'm Judith McMinn. I'm the founder of a startup called Reason, and we've developed a protective headband that reduces concussion and subconcussion in sport, which has become the daily talking topic and probably a more valuable one to talk about than both the weather and the Tory leadership. Because every day, and particularly this weekend, we're hearing and reading more about brain trauma, brain injury, and a condition called CTE in sport. Not just only here in the UK, but stories that have been coming from the US for the last 10, 20 years from the NFL. And we've developed a British-made product which reduces some rotational forces to the brain. And that's the problem with brain injury in sport. People really don't know what the root cause is. And the root cause is quite simple. It is rotational forces to the brain, which cause the brain to rotate inside the skull, brain cells to shear. And unless you're reducing rotational forces...
brain cells to actually shear.
That's right, yes.
Wow.
And that's even more significant if you're a woman or a child. Brain cells in women are longer and thinner, so they shear more easily. And in children, and by that we mean up until the early 20s, less myelated cells, so they're more easily damaged. So unless you're reducing rotational forces to your brain, that's really key. And people have got caught up in sport about talking about bigger and faster athletes. It's about rotational forces to the brain. And also it's about subconcussions more so than it's about concussions. And concussion is just starting to enter the lexicon around sport, but subconcussions is something that people don't really know anything about.
It's weird, Judith, and John will get this because you're coming from Florida, so obviously being American, you're very used to American football.
Yes.
Or non-football, as we Brits call it. It looks like 3 hours of people having a meeting. And then every now and then they throw something, then they have another meeting.
It's a violent meeting, yes. Yes, as a matter of fact, I think that Judith is really onto something because that is the principal problem. What's happened now in the U.S. is that certain states like Texas are so carried away by football, our football, non-football, if I can use that term, because they put their kids into it. So you'll see kids who are, 5 years old with helmets on and pads and everything running into each other. And parents have become very concerned about that. And throughout the United States, there has been a very large movement to stop children from playing football until they're like 13 or 14 years old.
Really?
Which even then...
Yeah, and there's very good reason for that. Sorry to cut into that, but there's very good reason for that because this research shows, and John, you'll know this, the research shows that if you're a child under 12 and you're taking head impacts, regardless of whether it's in football, non-football, rugby, doesn't matter. The brain doesn't know whether you're playing in Wembley or Warrington or Florida or Manchester United, right? Under 12, you take head impacts, you grow up to be cognitively disadvantaged.
Goodness
Good
me.
Lord.
I mean, I heard
One
that
season's enough. One season's enough.
I heard that concussion was profoundly... Yes. I heard that concussion was profoundly undertreated in the UK. I've never heard the term subconcussion before, so I really want to hear about that. But it's actually a lot more serious than people think it is. It's just a word, isn't it? Concussion. Oh, it's a bang on the head, but it's obviously clearly a lot more than that, and we're just starting to understand that, right?
Absolutely. A couple of things before you answer that, Judith. Number one, just for you to think about, what's your view on heading the ball in football? We can answer that in a minute. And the other thing, John, to come back to you, you were talking about Texas. Well, my son emigrated there in February with his gang. And so that suddenly, I'm listening to that. Normally, it would go in one ear and out the other. I'm going, well, Texas, that's a long way away. Now, it's where my family is. So it resonates with me far more than one might anticipate. So, Judith, Neil's question,
Well, can I answer two things to Neil's point? And I think you make a great comment. First of all, a concussion is a brain injury,
right?
Not a head impact. It's a brain injury.
Yeah.
Second thing is concussion. Up to 90% of concussions are never reported. You don't want to tell your parents. You don't want to tell your coach. You don't want to tell your teammate. Yeah. So concussion is significantly underreported because you don't want to, you don't want to be out of the game. You don't want to lose your place. So. And then subconcussion. What's a subconcussion? Well, a subconcussion is where there's a force to the brain that you're unaware of that does damage and the people around you are unaware of. And just to give you a sense of magnitude, that's a quarter of the impact that a concussion is. But it's 500 times more frequent. So for every concussion you've had 500 subconcussions. And in this condition, CTE, which is starting to enter our understanding here in Britain, given the number of rugby players and former football players that have been diagnosed with it, 20% of people with CTE never, ever had a recorded concussion. Because CTE is not caused by concussion, it's caused by subconcussions. And when you take an impact to the head, initially the brain is designed to be protective in that neuroreaction. But when you take an impact upon an impact upon an impact, that initially protective becomes a destructive reaction.
So speaking of that, so Robert Van Buren's question, what's your view on heading the ball in football? Because as you know, John, over here in what you call soccer, heading the ball is a real skill.
That is a fantastic question, and there is a massive mistruth that needs to be busted around this. Heading the ball is 13% of impacts in football. 87% of impacts in football come from head to ground, head to knee, head to foot, head to post, head to shoulder. So banning heading is like saying stop the sale of Mars bars and you stop obesity in this country. It's the equivalent. And there would be no airtime for any show, your show or any other show, if you went out with that narrative. Heading is 13%. Right. Heading causes, that's subconcussions. It doesn't cause a concussion. There is, of course, the more you head, and if you did heading exclusively, of course, you're increasing the rotational forces to your brain, you're increasing the number of concussions. But to ban heading and to focus the debate on heading does not go back to what the root cause is, which is rotational forces from any head impact.
But Judith,
and then
rotational. Are you saying rotational?
Yes, rotational. So there are two types of force in an impact. Linear, which is straight line.
Boom. Right.
That stretches and compresses the brain. But rotational is angled. So you think when you're playing sport, elbows, knees, balls, they don't come straight, they come angled. And it's the angled impact that causes the brain to rotate on its axis.
See, I had to look up CTE because I wanted to know what it was. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
That's very well pronounced. Yes, it is, and that's a disease that's been known for over 100 years. Initially, it was known as punch drunk, and then
punch drunk. Oh right, okay.
Right.
And then it through American football and through research. And if you guys have ever seen the concussion film, and John, you'll know the concussion film, which was Will Smith. It was a bit of a flop.
I was about to ask if John had seen that. I don't even like mentioning Will Smith at the moment, but nor will I ever again. But that was a big deal because it was quite groundbreaking, wasn't it? I can't remember what it was called, to be honest with you.
Why is it so under? Oh, so why is it so? Where's the lack of understanding come from? Why is it taken so not seriously enough thus far, Judith?
It starts at clubs, coaches, parents, players, and fans. So, for the last number of years, we've been doing a lot of research to understand what people knew about brain injury in sport. And the answer is they knew nothing.
Right.
And sadly, there are still a lot of people who don't want to know. Because it's an uncomfortable topic. It's an uncomfortable shift. And for that reason, they don't want to engage in it. It's particularly uncomfortable for women who don't want to, understand that there's a higher risk there and in children. So therefore, nobody wants to be different. And the media, peer pressure, a lack of understanding, all of these things complicate. And the people that do have a voice in the media often, incorrectly speak about facts, or they misspeak about facts.
And do you think? What in the media?
That sounds unusual for our media.
It does fake news.
Yes, I know.
There is one thing I would add.
Go on.
And that is that in football now, non-football, I'm sorry, in the NFL, for instance, there are a number of players who are retiring very early in order to avoid these injuries because there was a major lawsuit that went on against the NFL, and Judith, I'm sure, is aware of this, that was about brain injuries in the NFL, and they actually put together what amounted to a class action lawsuit. You don't have too many of them here. We have lots of them in the U.S. A class action lawsuit, and the NFL had to pay a lot of money.
$750 million.
In addition to that, you've got major stars who come out of college, they play for a year, and then they retire because they're trying to avoid it. So there's a very high level of awareness. The problem is if you are from a poor background and you've gotten a scholarship, football scholarship, and you do really well and you end up in the NFL and suddenly you're trying to figure out how to spend $30-40 million, you're not likely to care if you're going to hurt your brain. So that's a major problem. They've done all kinds of things with helmets, perhaps whatever, Judith, you've put together could do something to help that too. But the bottom line is that NFL football is just very, very dangerous, and not just brain injuries. There are injuries for life. People have spinal injuries. That people who can't walk. There's so many different reasons to not play football. I played high school football. I was an all-county cornerback, and somehow I managed to not get hurt. And I'm never going to play again. Well, I'm not good enough. But I think the real point is that with the NFL, which is where a tremendous amount of attention is being paid to concussions as opposed to other sports, there are players who are just taking it in their own hands, saying, "I quit."
Yeah, it's interesting. It sounds like, even though there's a big awareness there, it sounds like here or in other circles, it's lots of people sticking their heads in the sand.
It's very, very often talked about in the U.S. Very often. There's no downplaying it, but these guys, kids don't want to come out of the game, things like that, and so they won't even say that they're dizzy. But now they have a special tent in the NFL, which if you get hit in the head, they take you in there and they give you I don't know what they do. They say that they're checking for concussions, and then they won't let you back out. They'll take your helmet away. Once they take your helmet away, you can't play because you can't. And they actually will take your helmet away to keep you from going back on that field.
And there are a few things from the US that don't quite translate to here. So number one is helmets. So obviously we play majority soccer, football and rugby in this country. Helmets wouldn't work, and helmets don't work because helmets are designed to reduce linear forces, straight line forces. So helmets actually do more danger because they protect the skull by allowing a greater force that then is transmitted to the brain. So helmets are not the solution. That's why what we've developed is a solution, because it's around soft form and it's around reducing these rotational forces. And as I say, unless you're reducing rotational forces, there's little point. All the helmets
do. Fascinating. I've never heard it talked about in this detail before. I want to know about this band that you've developed. How did it all come about? Did you just wake up one morning and think,
before we do
inspiration, solution. Sorry,
it is. Before we do that, this is coming in from John. This is New York State. And by the way, the lady who was having thunder and lightning, she's listening and watching from Manhattan right now. This is coming in from New York State. It says Liam Neeson's wife died of an epidural hematoma, and denial was part of the issue. Awareness is key with brain injury. And what Asa then says, she'd been snow skiing and had an accident. Brain injury can go undetected, and it can have an immediate effect.
And so on ski helmets and bike helmets, they are designed for linear forces. They are designed to stop you splitting your skull, which they do. But they do nothing to stop brain injury. So that's my point about helmets. Helmets work fine for stopping you splitting your skull, but really what we're talking about is the brain. And the brain is the softest, arguably the softest part of the body, but it's the most important because your brain determines you. It makes each of us. It determines your personality, your mood, your thinking, your processing. And of course, there's no brain transplant because you can get your head fixed up. You can have skull plates, and we've seen that in various sports people and people who've had, horrific accidents and car accidents. But you don't get a brain transplant. So that's why it's so key. And just another thing, John, that I think is really important that you mentioned there about NFL and awareness. Obviously, rugby here. Well, it might surprise you to understand that our rugby players in rugby union and league take more hits, more head impacts than NFL players. And for men who play professional rugby, and for your listeners, so for a man in his 30s to develop a neurogenital disease like CTE, the odds are 1 in 10,000. For a man who's played professional rugby, that's 1 in 20.
1 in 20. Good.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then just not to discriminate against the sort of the amateur grassroots player. If I told you if I asked you and asked your listeners what's 39 times bigger than prostate cancer, what's the answer?
CTE.
Concussion in sport in men who play rugby and football.
Wow.
And
by the way, Judith, 50% of our audience are women, so there's a lot of mums and grandparents who either might be playing sport themselves or thinking of putting their kids into sports. So
can I just then give the reverse of that? What we're talking about in terms of concussion in sport for women who play rugby and football is 13 times bigger than breast cancer. in terms of women diagnosed. And I know for a fact that if someone was to come to a sports club and say, would you like to reduce your risk of prostate cancer or breast cancer? I think there'd be very few people in that club who would say, no, thanks, we're not interested today.
Because
But
I'm an
no,
idiot.
yeah, but I go to clubs and the women tell me they don't care if they get dementia. And that's
What?
And that's what they say. And as a woman, you're 2 to 1 predisposed to
God
dementia. So in
almighty.
2020, more women died of dementia than COVID. And the other thing that's got quite confused in this debate is the type of dementia we're talking about, because people think of dementia as something you get in late years, a care home setting, etc.
Yep, my mum.
CTE is an early onset dementia. So you're getting it in your 30s, your 40s. Hence the news stories of the Steve Thompsons, the players that have come out, the Alex Pophams, etc., who have come out.
I have to ask you,
young
Judith,
men.
I have to ask you, because this is all about mental health and well-being, and Frank Bruno popped into my mind, who apparently is a lovely, lovely man.
Yes, I did panto with him. He was nice, very nice.
Yeah,
very
but
nice guy.
He struggled quite a lot with his mental health. I mean, is that being from constantly? Obviously, he's a boxer. Is that from being constantly bashed on the head? I mean, will it affect mental health as well? Is what I'm asking, I guess.
Yeah, the brain determines your moods, your thinking, your personality. Your brain determines everything. The question I've asked for 25 years, which drove me to develop this product, is why do you protect your shins and not your brain? And why do you?
Well,
why
when
do
you put it that way, well, it sounds ridiculous.
John, when you hear
sounds
something
ridiculous
like
when you
that,
put it that way, and it is.
It's ridiculous.
And why do you protect your teeth? Because most of us would benefit from cosmetic dentistry, and bad luck if you block out your
speak
teeth.
for yourself, Judith.
And most of us could get new teeth, but you can't get a new brain. So
before we go on to John, tell us what it is you've developed. Are you a scientist?
Yeah, tell us about this band.
Are you
I'm
a scientist or an inventor? Or are you like James Dyson? What's the deal?
I'm a gap finder and a problem solver. I'm a gap finder. I found a gap in the market because I wanted to know what I could use or what you could buy to protect your brain. And the answer was you could buy nothing. All you could do was buy something to protect your skull. So I brought together a team, we've developed, and that's spanning medicine, manufacturing, wearable technology, material science. And we've developed the first and only CE marked, so the first and only legal product of its type in the UK and Europe. We developed a protective headband, which I'll show you in a moment. I'll put it on. I'll take off the headset. And it's 70 grams, so it's light as a feather. It's 9.5 mil thick. We make it in Yorkshire, and we sell it around the world. And we're trying to give everybody an empowered choice to protect their brain.
Let's see this piece of magic.
We want it modelled, Judith. We want it modelled.
We want it modelled. So I'll take off the headset.
Okie dokie.
Please do.
Look at that. It's Mark Knopfler. Okay.
Mark Knopfler.
No. I'm very good. How does that
work? So there are 9 layers in that. And the layers, and it's really thin, so it's 9.5 mil thick. And there are 9 layers, and those layers move over each other in a zigzag way. So they reduce the transmission of rotational forces to the brain. So when you take that angled hit there, it reduces and reduces, so there's less going into the brain. That doesn't happen with a helmet. All the helmet does is allow you to take more and more force on the hard element. And this is really flexible and soft. You can see me doing that.
How did you come up with this?
I mean, I looked at what was in the market. I understood the problem. And to come to a solution, you've got to know the problem. And the point I'm making is that there are a lot of people talking about brain injury, but they're talking about the wrong things. They're talking about players being faster and fitter. They're talking about sideline technology. They're talking about after the event. This is about reducing. There's no point measuring and managing brain injury. Yes, there's a place for that, but not without reducing it in the first instance.
No.
And while
my dad used to say a pound of prevention is worth an ounce of cure, or something like that. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That was it.
Yeah. So that's what we're doing, and we want so we've reasonware.com. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. I'm allowed to.
No, we're not the BBC. We don't have any middle management. You can say
I'll stick it on the screen for you. What is it?
John, you're going to plug the backside out of what you're doing in a minute, so don't worry.
Reasonware, so REZON, where
REZON,
where WEAR.com, and it's reason. it's called Reason for a reason, because there's a really, really good reason to protect your brain. And John, we're selling it to the US. I have to say that our biggest market is the US, where, because people are so much more advanced in their thinking and their awareness and their understanding, we're selling this into flag football, rugby, other sports.
If you want a good market, you should go to the Texas youth leagues. I guarantee you, every parent. This is the youth football. Every parent, and Florida, by the way, these southern states are crazy for their football. And they have kids in there who are 8 years old. They have girls who are 8 years old playing tackle football. And they have certain rules to try to protect. But I think that if you were to, I'm sure they have an association. I've been, by the way, I've run corporations and everything else. I just happen to love music too much to keep doing that. But my point is that I know what you're talking about. If you want a market niche to go into, youth football in the south part of the U.S., Texas, Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, Kentucky, Georgia, and so on. And if you contact the youth football leagues and your product is in fact, I mean, they're going to want to have some sort of scientific validity for it. I'm sure you have that. I can tell you right now, you will sell out.
Judith,
they cannot play football.
Judith and John, all I'm going to say is that men's radio station, a mere 5% of your sales, thanks to John O'Brien and you, Judith. A mere 5% to keep us going.
I'm booking a flight as we speak. But yes, the science is behind this.
John. That'll do.
The science is behind this, guys. Because that's the one other thing that's really quite important to us and our values, is that we're not a gimmick. And this is a really quite a scary topic. And when people start to understand the facts and understand that, at an amateur and a professional level, you're at a serious risk of brain injury. We wanted something that really had integrity. And we've invested a lot in the science. We have a Virginia Tech 5-star rating, John, which you'll know what that means from a US perspective. But that's a test house in the US that looks at every type of protective headwear, from helmets right through to.
I'm aware of that.
And 5 stars, the top of class.
Like an NCAP rating, is it for cars?
Yes,
basically.
Similar to that. And then the CE mark here in the UK and Europe, which means that you have to be compliant with the law. And as I say, we're the first and only product of its type with a CE mark.
The way that I'm thinking of it, Judith, when you describe this band, because I'm looking at this kind of, let's be honest, pretty flimsy or malleable band, pretty much like carbon fiber in Formula One. You look at it, you pick it up, there's no weight, but the way that it's weaved gives it the most incredible strength, which you would never know from just looking
and the
at
movement. So I can understand how it would diffuse something at an angle if it's going at a zigzag. It's just angles on angles on angles, and as it goes through each layer, it diffuses it one more bit. Very, very clever, simple.
Correct.
Now, you wouldn't know, Judith, you wouldn't know that Dave Sleet, who runs a wonderful psychotherapeutic company called ANA, is going through horrendous problems at the moment. He's come down from Fife in Scotland. He's got a load of tests this week. He and I chat all the time. He's been very kind to Men's Radio Station, very supportive. And believe me, he's saying very close to home for me right now. Thank you for this topic being discussed. He's got problems, which is not fair for me to discuss, but believe me, you don't want them. Yeah. Dave, we wish you all the very best. So it's very, you're hitting home.
Hitting home, and wish Dave all the best for everything this week. But one thing you're probably wondering, why does it not cover the top of the head? Because, of course, you think of helmets covering the crown of the head. You think of scrum caps, which, by the way, are not protective. Scrum caps actually increase concussions. So if you want a concussion, or you want your child to have a concussion or subconcussion, a scrum cap is half.
I've never understood the point of scrum. I played rugby at school, loathed it, but never understood the point of it.
My producer Ken's asked a question, Judith. Can it be worn under a cycling helmet?
It can, yes, provided you don't take out the liner or invalidate your cycling helmet. We have people who wear it under ski helmets, bike helmets, and they wear it as an extra level of protection. So the helmet protects against linear, and this would then help against the rotational. Particularly mountain bikers will do that because there's a greater risk of coming off.
Interesting.
But you can. But as I say, we would say don't invalidate your helmet. And we are.
You're back, John. You're back.
John, hey, you're back. And we have obviously been looking at incorporating this into helmets, military helmets as well as more.
I've never. I mean, in the last half hour, I've just learned so much. I mean, I've never heard this topic discussed in such nuance before. And
well, that's the problem. That's the problem, Neil, because
yes,
we've got a lot of people writing books, a lot of people on Twitter, a lot of people on Instagram, a lot of people in the media, a lot of people contributing to articles, and they're focusing on the wrong things because they don't have the leading medics behind them. They don't know what the root cause of the problem is. And sadly, the wrong debate's being had. And
but
the debate that's being had allows
you know why? You know why? Is because, and it's what I wanted to do when Howard and I started this radio station, is not give people a 3-minute soundbite or a 4-minute soundbite with Phil and Holly and let's go on to summer floaty fashion and then we hit an ad break and all that stuff, is to give it an in-depth conversation. The media, as we know it, cannot, outside of shows like this where we can deep dive, it won't go into details, because if they think, oh, this is too complicated for the audience, no, we'll go. They won't do it. They won't touch it with the bar.
What kind of reaction are you getting from the people you present this to, particularly people in media sources?
Media are not interested.
They're not interested.
No, the media are not interested because it's a product, and they want a story. So they're only interested, and I've had this from names that I won't embarrass. They're only interested if the Chelsea women's football team would wear it, or they're only interested if a Premier League team would wear it in its entirety, or that's what they're interested in. What's the reaction I get at clubs? It's not their problem. So and I'm sorry that John had dropped off there, but in the US, obviously the duty of care point is better understood than it is here. So
it's not their problem. I mean, it kind of bloody well is, because if your team's unhealthy and they've all got concussion, then it's going to be a great team.
Two things from a team perspective. Now, this is going to shock you, Neil. One is, if you've had a sports-related concussion for the year after, you're at up to 67% increased risk of having a lower body injury. So that's an Achilles, it's a muscle tear. So you just think what the impact of that is on a team. And the second thing is, as we know, injuries cost. And if we just look at the Premier League and we look at what injuries cost last season, which was 336 million, that's costly. So not only would a player want to protect their performance and keep them in the game, you'd think clubs would want to reduce.
Well, one would have thought so. It does seem to be somewhat of a false economy.
It's totally counterintuitive. Stupid question, but while I've got you on the blower, Judith, have you been to the top PR companies?
Yes, but again, little thing, when you're a startup and when you're just emerging as a business, again, very, very hard to get time with these people, because they're wanting Apple products or they're wanting Microsoft products. So there's definitely something about more in this country we can doing to help British innovative startups.
Have you thought about Dragon's Den? Just a thought.
Dragon's Den is great for the publicity, and we'd love that, but probably beyond that, it's just not right at this time.
Judith, will you do me a favor?
I will.
After the show, you've got my email, haven't you?
I will. Yeah, I will.
Send me a reminder, because my having gone to bed at 4:45 this morning, I'm not firing on all cylinders. Nearly, not quite. I'm more of a V6 than a V8, should we say. I'm certainly not a V12. I will introduce you to a couple of my PR chums, and let's see what they can run with it. That's my pleasure. What they do with it after that is up between you and them.
Yeah, good luck. It's
I'm
all
also
been
going to introduce
you
to Luther Have you heard of Luther? Sorry, Neil, my apologies. Have you heard of Luther Blissett?
No. Who is that?
All right, let me introduce you to Luther Blissett. He's very high up in the world of soccer.
Well, I would welcome the opportunity to speak to him.
He's a lovely, lovely man. He's been on the show once, and we're trying to set up various things. I wish John would come back. Be nice.
And schools is the other thing we're trying to do, because it's never too early to protect your brain, as I said.
Sure.
because of the risk under 12. But also, while everybody aspires to perhaps having a sporting career, it doesn't happen. It happens for a very, 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 very small percentage of people. And of course, you need your brain for other careers and professions. And getting this into schools.
Unless you're Neil and me.
Really, just for living.
Unless you're Neil and myself, in which case, what we do for a living, it's detrimental.
Speak for yourself.
Shut up.
But I just want to say like a huge thanks for having the opportunity to speak about this and talk about the facts and to really, I guess, highlight what this is. And there are, this is something, as I say, that has been probably incorrectly covered, the wrong stories, sometimes anecdote over science has led the way in this. People telling, the very, very sad stories which need to be heard, but not bringing forward necessarily a solution to consider.
Judith, have you seen this message coming in?
One of our regular listeners, Asa Don Brown, who, as Russ says, is very high up in the psychiatric community.
Well,
Judith, I would be interested in learning more about your work. I've worked with the Brain Injury Foundation in Canada. I would love to share your work. I'm intrigued. So another contact for you there, maybe.
Please. Well, look, please get involved or get in touch on our website, email address there. Just get in touch, and I promise I'll personally reply to that and look out for that one.
See, you never know which way these things the cards are going to fall, do you?
I'm always open to a bit of networking. Always.
Oh,
yeah,
always.
The thing about it is, it drives me mad when the media is so full of utter shit, of products that are garbage, that don't work, but it's got an endorsement by some idiot, from Essex, from some Essex show or some crap, and then here you are with something which is fundamentally life-changing. No.
Yeah. No. And the other thing that, and this might appeal to some of your listeners, is it's a British product with an all British supply chain, and it's recyclable at the end of its life. So at the end, when you finish, and this lasts about a year. So it's machine washable, lasts about a year, and we take it back and we decommission it. And we take the polymer, the rubber polymer that's inside, and we decommission that down to a rubber crumb that goes on the artificial pitches. And we take the fabric and we put it into the furniture industry, and we do that again in Yorkshire.
I haven't asked. That's really good. I love stuff like that. What's the cost?
£1.73 a week, $89.99 over the course of a year, which equates to £1.73. Yeah. So I didn't make this for Marcus Rashford. I didn't make this for Harry Kane. I made this for Marcus Nobody and Harry down the park. And I made it for women.
I love that.
I made it for women, girls, children, everybody across the country, and it's global. You could wear that in Abu Dhabi. You could wear that in Saudi. You could wear that in Australia.
I mean, for what it offers, what's 89 quid a year to protect your brain?
Well, again, when I go to clubs and schools, people suck air through their teeth. They ask me if they could get a second year.
Have they seen the cost of a wheelchair?
Have
they seen the cost of care home?
Yeah, and the cost of losing life and not living every day as you would. And I think that's the bit where we've probably got quite lost, because we don't value the brain, because sport focuses below the neck. Sport focuses and determines performance below the neck, faster, fitter, stronger. It never thinks above the neck. The closest sport comes to thinking above the neck is nutrition and sleep.
I think I hate to bang on about Formula One, but it is my passion, always has been. I think they think a lot, because that is the perfect marriage of skill and engineering. Whereas tennis, football, no. Formula One is, without the engineering, it's nowhere. But without a very skilled driver, it's nowhere. You can have the best car in the world. If the guy can't drive it properly, you're screwed. So I think that's where brain power, these Formula F1 drivers are really smart. They're very, very smart.
Yeah, but
can't say the same for every soccer player. Let's be honest.
No, but performance does. That's what makes them great. When you think about going back in time and you think about the best football players, you think of the George Bests, you think of even today, it's their brain. It was their quick thinking. That determines them. Somebody has asked, I just see a question coming in, presuming clubs should buy it for their players. Well,
this is coming in from Manhattan, as a matter of fact.
Perhaps, but why would a player not want to protect themselves? Why would a parent not want to protect their child? I mean,
and Rosemary Jessup's point is you must be dying under that tin roof. I was talking about that. on Talk TV, Rosemary, actually, singing your praises, but saying how uncomfortable it must be. Without a halo, the halo is a safety unit fitted on an F1 car. If you don't know anything about it, why would you? Without a halo, they'd be killed. Well, they would be certainly helped the other day. Monstrous thing. Here we go. This is an answer from Paul Claridge. Would you like to read it, Mr. Long?
Sure. I think part of the problem was it comes to life-changing illness or injury. Too many people think it won't happen to me. Well, breaking news, people, it can and does happen to anyone. We're all vulnerable. Yeah.
Well, go back to those stats again. Concussion.
Just go back. Yeah, just go through those stats once more because they blew me away. Let's have those again, if you don't mind.
So, 28% of injuries in rugby are head injuries, concussion.
Right.
Okay. 22% in football, soccer, concussion, head injury. Okay. You take the numbers in the UK who play men who play those two sports, and you apply that rate, which is average across it. That's 39 times bigger a population than the number of men diagnosed with prostate cancer every year in England. And the same stats, but for women, and it's 13 times bigger than the number of women diagnosed with breast cancer.
Goodness me.
Take that stat I said about professional rugby players, because that's where, obviously there's been much more stories coming out. Because of CTE and because of the impacts, because of these subconcussive impacts that these retired contact sports players are taking. That's why rugby players show it first. So they take it in their 30s and 40s, and football players take it in their 50s and their 60s. And a man in his 30s to develop a neurogenital disease like CTE, 1 in 10,000 risk. But look at the former rugby players, 1 in 20. So doesn't happen to me? Yeah, it does. It's 2 in every changing room.
You've really done your homework. You really have.
I've done my homework.
It's a terrible choice of words. Impactful when you say it that way. It really is.
And back to the point. Well, thank you both, and thank you for the opportunity to come on to share the homework. But back to the heading point. You read article after article, and people say, "Is heading dangerous?" And "Is this heading banned?" and things like that. Every time you read that article, and everybody's listening to this, think about, would that article be published if it said, "Should Mars bars be banned to ease obesity?" Because, of course, back to my point, you could swap to another chocolate bar. And until people understand that subconcussions from heading a ball are 13%, and 87% are coming from other head to knee, head to post, as we explained. And people understand that it's these rotational forces. And unless you're putting something on your head to reduce rotational forces, you might as well be wearing a hairnet or nothing, or our product, which is designed to reduce these rotational forces. And helmets, again, you read the comments and people say, "Oh, they should wear helmets in rugby." Back to that point, helmet is only about linear forces. It allows a greater force.
But most people don't know that, do they? You're dealing with an awful lot of ignorance. Well, I've never heard it broken down into linear forces and rotational. I didn't even ask you if you were actually saying rotational. I wasn't sure what the word was. When you explained it, it all made perfect sense. But this is my first encounter with information like this ever.
Great question coming in from the States. Judith, have you ever been, while you've been looking at sports players, etc., have you considered professional industries such as firefighters and police?
Yes. So one of the hardest things in bringing this idea to reality was finding a manufacturer. And I was very lucky that I found an amazing manufacturer here in the UK that specialise in specialist production of protective equipment for the police, for the military, etc. So yes, we have, and we took some ideas from work that's been done in previous protective wear into that. And I just would like to say, I think this is just something to say to everybody. I waited 25 years before I acted on a question that I'd had to do something about it. So for 25 years, from playing hockey at school, and that question that I asked about, well, why do you protect your shins and not your brain? I turned my idea into a CE marked product in 334 days. So anybody's listening to this show, I just say this: don't waste your time. Just get on and do it, and bring something really credible. Put your focus and put your effort into it.
I think that's great. Although I have to say, I've played hockey with girls, and I would protect my shins as well as my brain. To be honest with you.
And my
I know what you lot were like.
I would protect somewhere else as well.
And teeth.
Rosemary, no. I hate to disagree, because you're always so
Oh.
supportive of us. No, Rosemary, Judith's saying the exact opposite
Correct.
to your point. Could you just
Yes, just let me
explain
clarify
again?
that again. So helmets are designed, hard shed helmets are designed to stop linear forces. They are designed to protect your skull, not your brain. So a helmet allows a greater force to actually go through to the brain because it allows a harder hit. So helmets are fine when you're riding a bicycle or skiing because the real risk there is, of course, that you come down and you split your skull. You obviously will get concussion as well, but the greater risk is splitting your skull. When you play rugby or football or hockey, the risk is concussion, more so than it is splitting your skull. And that's why helmets are not appropriate. Plus, also, then you're damaging other people, because one of the reasons why we, under game rules, I mean, you can't wear something that damages anybody else. So that's why helmets, if you wore a helmet in football and I didn't, it wouldn't be allowed, because, of course, I would be bashing into you and cause damage. So, Rosemary, I'm sorry, but no, it's the other way around. You need to be wearing non-helmeted, non-hard.
You must have to explain this. I'm not having to dig at you, Rosemary, not at all, but you must have to explain this over and over, because I guess people just don't get the nuance, don't get the difference.
Yeah, the things that need explained over and over again is, first of all, impact is actually linear and rotational force, and it's rotational forces, not linear. And so therefore, anybody talks about buying a product that stops impact, the first question you've got to ask them is, what impact are you talking about? Linear or rotational? It's like buying sunscreen. No one will go in today and say, I just have some sunscreen, please. You'll buy a factor 50 or a 15, depending on your risk factor. And that's the same about impact protection. So linear impact protection is fine if you're protecting your knees or your elbows, but it's not appropriate because of the brain, because the brain and these rotational forces and the spin of the brain, the rotation.
Now, you talk an awful lot about protecting other people's well-being. What do you do for your own sanity and well-being?
What do I do? Bit of exercise, live in the countryside, fresh air. I do think about other things other than headbands, CTE, and brain injury, though it has utterly consumed my life for the last.
Well, I can imagine it would, but there is a life beyond it.
There is a life
beyond
it.
In a weird way. I think
there is a life beyond it. But I have thoroughly enjoyed being a very late entrepreneur. I mean, most people think of entrepreneurs, people who leave school and or start an idea at school. I only started my entrepreneur journey at 40.
But it really is a journey. Whenever we set out on doing something new, like this perfect example, you can't help learning along the way just by being with people doing the similar things. I've got back into stand-up comedy, and just by hanging out in comedy clubs and talking to people, you just absorb so much by osmosis. And it's a brilliant journey because it keeps things fresh and exciting. I think that's a good mental health thing as well, rather than just same old.
And challenged.
I'm
always being challenged.
And
I never meet anybody that embraces me with open arms. Everybody heckles me and says, so this and so that, and that keeps you fresh.
Wow. Finally, this wonderful.
You do well on the comedy club in that case.
Boo, get off. In the music industry, says Paul Endicott, I know many heavy metal headbangers who would benefit from this product.
Paul, can I just say that not only does this come in our sort of standard colors, but it comes in just shy of 9,000 color and design patterns. So I'm fairly certain we can do something to match the rockers.
What about? I have to ask this question now. It's a little bit frivolous. What about a mosh pit? I mean, that can't be good. That can't be good for the brain and concussion and things like that. Mad. A filthy mosh pit,
I would think so. It's not something I've given a lot of thought to, but there we are.
Well, neither had I before that.
One quick question. Oh, we can't let you go because the questions keep coming in. One last question from Paul.
Of course, I will stay as long as you need me. What about boxers?
Yeah. What about? Why don't you read out the question, Judith, and then answer it? That would be quite cool.
What about boxers? The helmets or head guards amateur boxers wear are relatively soft, but of course boxers are being constantly hit around the head with force. Paul, that is the best. Paul, that is a fantastic question, and there's lots in it.
Don't encourage him.
I see. I see.
Pain in the ass.
Okay, Paul. The objective of boxing is to knock your opponent out, which means that's why you never hit an opponent there. You hit the opponent at the side of the head to create a rotational force. And on that rotational force, you're rotating the brain, causing subconcussion, concussion, and essentially trying to knock your player out. So that's the objective of boxing, right? The head guards that amateur boxers wear are made of something called EVA foam. They are not designed for rotational force reduction. They are only in the same way that scrum caps are designed around linear forces. So they are padding. You would get better quality impact protection in the insoles of shoes. And obviously, the last Olympics saw the case where men didn't wear head guards and women did. And the head guards are useless. Back to my point, unless you're putting something on your head that reduces rotational forces, you might as well be wearing a hairnet or a colander or a shower cap or just nothing. Take your pick.
Lovely message from Kimmy Lashmar, big friend of the show. Well done, Judith, for getting it done.
Well, thanks, Kimmy.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And it's also nice to know that it's never too late to follow a dream or become an entrepreneur or do what you want to do. You're living proof of it, and that's great to see. That's a wonderful thing to see. All about mental health, of course.
Correct, and it's never too early to protect your brain is the other message I would say.
Oh, I like that.
That's
going to be your fridge magnet, isn't it? It's never too early to protect your brain and never too late to follow a dream or something.
Correct. And our third message, if you want a trio, is protect your performance, because the only performance comes from the brain. So protect your performance.
Well,
and that's
exactly.
a message. And that's a message Harry Kane to everybody
else. If we totted up all the money that's wasted through all these injuries for the sake of 89 quid a year, I mean, it's just crazy.
It goes beyond. Think about what we would save the NHS. And at what point will society ask sport to pay their way?
Right. Yeah, interesting. Liz says, well said. My producer wants to say something. What's up, Ken?
If she sold absolute millions of these things, the cost would be reduced. Manufacturing costs could be reduced, so it would make it more accessible for people, I imagine. Would that be a possibility in the future?
Yes. I mean, we choose to manufacture in Britain. That's a choice we've made, which carries a cost.
Well done.
But
thank God it didn't go to China for once.
It is not. It's British made with an all British supply chain. We're obviously responsible in terms of the recyclability, and we also give back to charity. We give back to a project called Scores. There are choices about why it's $89.99, and if I could sell millions and I could give everybody the choice to protect their brain, millions in this country and beyond, then the price point does change. But for the moment, it's $173 a week. Half the price of a latte.
Do you know what it is, Judith? Everyone thinks things are expensive until something goes wrong. And the moment something goes wrong, think, oh God, why didn't I take out that insurance? Oh Christ, why didn't I get that back up for my laptop? Oh, this, that, and the other. Everything's great when everything's going swimmingly well. But life always throws you a curve. And things do not always go swimmingly well. So for £1, whatever the hell it is, under £2 a week, if that's what you're doing for your sport or your pastime or your living, for me, I was going to say a no-brainer. You can have that as a fridge magnet too.
We have no brain, no gain, actually. Trademarked, and again, that there's real significance in that, because without the brain, as I say, you can't become the great that you want to be in sport and life. But you're right, people don't know the value of things. They're obsessed with the price.
Just a thought: have you approached people like Dr. Joe Dispenza? He does a lot of mind-body kind of stuff, how the brain and the mind and the body all interact, and how we can become the greatest version of ourselves. It's very, very deep science into like almost the core of who we are. But he actually recovered from an accident. He was cycling and went under a lorry or something, and they said he'd never walk, and he thought, no, I will use my mind and brain to heal. And he did, and he kind of promised the universe, if you like, he'd spend the rest of his life researching and teaching it, which he is. But people like him, people like Dawson Church, people like that, they could be good contacts for you.
Yeah, I'd love an intro. I'd love to speak to these
I don't know him personally, but it's worth worth looking him up. Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yeah.
Be like the Four Tops. Reach out.
And the other thing is, that's definitely where we want to get into. What we're positioning ourselves as the advocate for the brain in sport. One of the things that I hate the most that's said in sport is a phrase, come back stronger. You cannot come back stronger from brain injury.
Bullshit. You know what, Judith? The other thing that I hate is that which doesn't kill you. It's Nietzsche. who I always associate with Nazis, can't help it. That which does not kill you makes you stronger. Bullshit. No, it doesn't. It absolutely smacks you in the face and you've got to try and recover. It doesn't make you stronger. Just absolute nonsense. They are lousy fridge magnets. Lousy ones. Anyway, listen, thank you so much, Judith. You are
thank you very much.
A force of good, and you're great.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Sorry we lost our old guest, John.
Yeah, me too.
Sorry we didn't hear some of the more of the American insights. But I look forward to speaking to you guys again soon. And
hang on, before you go, more coming in from sorry, Neil, you beat me to it.
Neil Long, excellent idea. You ought to. Do you want to, Judith, hit me up on Facebook, Neil Long DJ, and I'll private message you these names.
Well, Neil, I will do that. And
Neil Long DJ, or Russ has got my email address. Just email me. Reach out to Dr. Sanjay Gupta in the States and Dr. Bruce Monkhouse in Victoria, British Columbia. There's so many kind of mind, body, holistic-y type people, and I reckon they'd be much more receptive to it than trying to convince the ones that really need it, if you know what I mean.
Unbelievable.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Guys, thank you so much. Have a great week, and I look forward to us speaking again soon. And
well done.
It's been brilliant. Take the best of care.
Bravo. Bye-bye. Amazing.
What an amazing lady.
Amazing. Fantastic. Now, I just want to say a huge, huge, huge thank you. I posted on Facebook that my Rolex had disappeared. It wasn't just any old Rolex. It was the Rolex that Capital Radio, to my utter amazement, gave me when I left in 2004. I'd been there 20 years. They threw a wonderful party for me, handed me a gift. I unwrapped it. I couldn't believe it. There was a Rolex inscribed on the back, engraved, and it disappeared. And I wrote on Facebook, hundreds and hundreds of you were so kind and so sweet, came up with all sorts of suggestions, some of which included, and I thought it was bonkers, but I had her on the phone this morning. It was from Louise Roby, my old pal. It said, put an empty upside down glass on your windowsill. And I replied, me being me, are you on drugs? Anyway, several other people said, no, try this. Put an upside down empty glass on your windowsill. It'll turn up. I got home from Talk TV at 4:30 this morning, and at 4:50 this morning, I leapt out of bed and I thought, I'm going to do it. What the hell? I got nothing to lose. I went to the kitchen, put an upside down, blow me down this morning, and I checked it for the last 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, couldn't find it anywhere. Out of the bedding, the Rolex just rolls gently out like magic. And I looked at it and I thought, if I believed in the supernatural, having written The Gatekeeper, you think I might, I couldn't get over it. And it's the way the Rolex just rolled. It didn't just drop, casually rolled out like a magic trick.
We should probably do a show on manifestation, because lots of people.
Well, let's do that. That's your area of expertise. I know nothing about it.
No, I'm not. I'm an absolute novice at it, but I know someone.
I'll find someone, Neil. You love all that. That'd be great. Find somebody, seriously. But I just wanted to say a personal, heartfelt thank you so much. And thank you, Paul Claridge, Mr. Cynic. The first person I told before anybody else, was my lovely insurance broker, Melanie Burns at Profile Insurance. And she was delighted. Because I hadn't claimed, I put them on notice, which is entirely different. No, and I wasn't going to lie about it. And the weird thing is, before you all think I'd gone mad, I had checked the bed. I thought, well, maybe when I came in from the wedding 2-3 weeks ago, it was nowhere. And then I did the things that everyone suggested on Facebook, and within 3 hours, it turns up after 3 weeks. I don't know what to say.
It's given.
I don't know what to say. It's extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. Anyway, it's back in its safe place. So thank you, everybody. What a wonderful little community. When we choose to be, as Neil, I'm sure, will agree, when we choose to be, it can be a loving, helpful, supportive community. And when we choose not to be, it can be a vicious, ghastly, backstabbing sewer. And I avoid that. I know Neil does too.
Yes, I'm a bit done with that.
Yeah, I'm over all that. I won't engage in negative stuff. I just won't engage with it. But thank you. It means so much. Well, there we are. It was a great start to the week. I have to be honest with you.
Great start to the week. What's happening Wednesday then?
What is happening Wednesday?
Yes.
Yes. What? What?
No, I'm just saying. What's plans for Wednesday? We've got a minute left. I was just.
Oh, what's happening Wednesday? It'll be something exciting. Don't you worry about that. Have no fear. Look at this. This is lovely. Paul Courage, MRS and WSS, Men's Radio Station, Women's Radio, are our extended families. Thank you very much.
I found this in lockdown when I was doing the DJ parties in lockdown. People, it really was a mental health thing, particularly at the beginning of lockdown when people were scared. And people honestly do treat that, they call it their video families, as an extended family. And that's a wonderful thing. It's good to know people have got you back. And here we are.
It is great. Well, anyway, once again, thank you all. Thanks for tuning in today. Amazing guest. I'm sorry we didn't get to chat to our American visitor.
Yes, we get him back. I thought he was going to be very interesting.
I hope he came back because I know the PR company and we had millions of emails, and there he was. And then I think he had a bad connection, actually. What does this say? Finally, from New York City, met some of you, Mao. Don't know what that means. What does this say? It rolled out of bed because it's a Rolex. I now see where
Linda, go and stand in the corner.
Oh, God. Bye-bye, everybody. Take care. Neil and I will see you Wednesday at 12. Till then, take care. Stay cool.
Good afternoon.
Bye.